You're listening to Leaders Unedited with Keogh, a monthly podcast where your host and Keogh CEO, Margaret Mansfield, sits down with inspiring leaders making waves in Australia and beyond.
Welcome to this episode of Leaders Unedited. I'm your host, Margaret Mansfield, and with me today I have the CEO of Steel Blue, Garry Johnson. Welcome, Garry.
Thanks, Margaret.
Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Now, we've known each other a long time and we met in banking, in financial services. So I'm really intrigued at how you made the transition from banking to manufacturing boots.
Yes, Margaret, we've known each other for a while. And before we get into the transition, I think I should be remiss. We're talking about leadership today. And I recall when I was in an early leadership role in banking, and at the time, I guess I was trying to get everything done super fast and I was charging ahead of my team. And you gently, possibly not so gently, took me aside for a coffee and reminded me about taking the team with you. So that stuck in my mind over the years. So thank you for that. And it made a hell of a difference with the team. So thank you. Yes, transitioning from banking to safety footwear. I didn't have that on my radar. But when you think about it, it's not that big a change. Yes, it was a risk for me at the time. You know, I had a pretty well proven career in banking and a good network. And same for the board of Steel Blue. There was a bit of a risk for them, you know, taking on someone uncharted in footwear, would it work out? But when you're in the job, I think you quickly realise things like strategy, people, leadership, finance, they're pretty much portable across all businesses. So the principles that I've learned over my career in the banking equally applied to the safety footwear industry, albeit we're selling safety boots instead of loans, and you know that's the difference, but the product is different. But pretty much the processes, the way we lead our people, the way we manage the business, that's not so different.
Okay. But you did step into CEO role, so how different was that? What did you have to change about your thinking and your leadership?
Yeah, stepping up to CEO role, one of the first things I learned was it's not just about leadership down, you've got a board. As CEO, you've got to answer to the board and our case shareholders and an AGM. So all of a sudden you have to change your leadership perspective. Instead of just looking one direction, you've got to look multiple directions. So that was the first learning as CEO. And the second part is around, I guess, people's looking to you for the strategy. But what I quickly realised, especially from my time, I was fortunate in my banking career to work with McKinsey & Co. whilst at Westpac and Boston Consulting Group at Bank West. And what I learned from them, it's about process. So we've got a bit of a mantra at Steel Blue, good process delivers good outcomes. And so it's that process of strategy setting. You don't have to do it all yourself. You need to facilitate the process, help narrow down the opportunities, and then back in the team to deliver. So that was a little bit different for me. When I was in banking, a lot of that key strategy was coming from, even though I had quite a large leadership role, the strategy was coming from above and our role was to implement. So as a CEO, my role was not just to implement, it was to help develop that strategy. So I found that a little bit different at first.
Okay. And you mentioned the board, these aren't your words, they're mine, took a bit of a risk in bringing you into the role because you were, you know, an unknown entity, you had a different background. How did you convince the board that you were the right person for the job?
Well, I think in the interview process, I talked about the various in banking. You know, I didn't have the same role the whole career. I had multiple different careers, including head of financial markets, head of small business. And each of those roles, I had to learn different skills. And I talked about how I would apply myself to that. And that's what happened. Again, good process, good outcomes. In my first 90 days, I really took the time to understand the business. I didn't get involved too much in the day-to-day decision making. I didn't make any changes. I actually spent time doing each person's role. A few funny stories there. I was in the warehouse picking boots and I heard Les, who would be one of our more elderly team members, he said, "Crikey, that new person's pretty slow." And then the supervisor goes, "Shh, that's the new CEO." And then I went down to the factory where we actually make the boots and I was trying to trim some boots. And Nev, who was doing that job, said to me, "Perhaps you should let the real men do this job and you stick to being a CEO." So, but it was good because I got a really good feel for the business and as I was going around, I just asked a couple of simple questions, being what's working well now, what's not working that frustrates you, and if I could do one thing to make your job easier, what would it be? And by then, that 90 days, I had quite a big list of potential opportunities that we could focus on. And then it was a matter of, I guess, putting them through a bit of a sieve, a mental sieve as to which ones would give us the biggest bang for buck initially to get that change going. And then that's how I went about it. I also found a mentor who retired, legend in the footwear industry, and I got him to be my mentor. And so I quickly knew my vamps from my inside quarters and back straps. It wasn't long before I was talking the lingo that they all talk.
You know more than me about shoes. I just know what looks nice on the shelves.
Yeah, my wife Claire's not happy now because every time I go out and look at a pair of shoes, I look at it and go, that's cheap, that's not good.
So she has some inside information.
Yes.
I think though your step in, actually understanding the job and stepping into the shoes of the people on the shop floor would have made such a difference in building trust at the get-go.
Yeah, I think it did. People realised I wasn't just out there to make change. There was a bit of a fear that I was coming from a corporate background. There was going to be all these rules and regulations, and so it was about getting to understand them. And I felt that if I could make some changes that made their life easier, I'd get them on board with me to start the change wagon. Not that anything was broken. The business was immensely successful, so it wasn't about coming to a business that was broken. It was coming to a business that was being successful but wanted to go to the next level.
Okay. Now, talking about taking the team with you, as you mentioned earlier, you've grown the business quite significantly since you've been CEO. How did you lead that growth? Because, being a large international organisation is quite different.
Yeah, it has its challenges and it also has its benefits and some good times as well. So, yeah, since I've been at Steel Blue, we've expanded into Europe, USA, Middle East, more recently Israel. We're in, I think, 100 stores in Israel now, which is quite amazing. But the growth in particular USA and Europe. And so that was about really, again, it's a leadership group. We typically go away for a couple of day offsite each year, and we started formulating what are our growth options? So could we grow internally using a matrix? Are we better off trying to grow more internally? But we felt, yes, we could grow internally in Australia, but we were reaching as the number one brand. There was a limit to how much market share you can get. So for us, it was really around, well, what do we do? Do we go into new segments or to new markets? And we felt the lower risk path would be going to new markets. Then it was about identifying markets that would pay the price point for a premium brand and where we felt we could win, i.e. we had a point of difference. And so that was about research. Again, I'm a sort of a hands-on leader, so that involved trips to USA and to Europe to attend trade shows, to have a look at the competition, talk to potential partners, to sound them out so we could better understand the market opportunity. And then again, we engaged some specialists to help us with some research to formulate our strategy. And having done all that, we arrived in USA, for example, and that strategy was out of date straight away. So, you can spend a lot of time on strategy. Sometimes you just got to get in there and learn on the fly. And we've adapted our business model today in USA. It looks very different to the way we started 6 years ago. But one of the learnings to me is you've got to stay the course. I think in leadership now, fortunately, a lot of CEOs, especially in public companies, are on a short reporting framework, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. And if they start a project and it doesn't work out as quickly as anticipated, people quickly give up. And I saw that in banking. A lot of great change programs were abandoned within 12, 18 months because I think people's expectations or poor understanding of change management, they have this linear expectation, but it was never going to be that case. And people will abandon way too soon.
And it sounds to me you've built an organisation that's quite agile in being able to respond in the moment. But I'm also interested in your innovation. You've done a lot of firsts, as you describe, and it seems to me you have quite an innovative culture. So how did you go about building that?
What I was really excited about joining Steel Blue was our early founders focused the business on being the first. And we were the first to offer 30-day money-back guarantee, the first for tri-sole comfort. And what I felt was incumbent upon me as CEO was to keep that culture going. So we at every occasion we always talk about being a company of first. So it's sort of ingrained in our DNA that people aren't satisfied just with being settled. We're sort of relentless. We're sort of always looking for ways to be the first. And more recently, we're proud to lead the sector in regards to sustainability, being the first footwear brand in Australia to be Scope 3 carbon neutral. That's an example of being a first. So innovation is not always in product. It can be. We just launched the world's first graphene enhanced boot, but it can be in other ways as well. And I think what's important to me is to have that culture where people don't feel they cannot put ideas up. And we sort of, each year, we're always challenging ourselves, okay, that's great, what's next? And I think it comes back to the culture of the business, but also it comes back to me. I recall early in my days, I was visiting a customer when I was a commercial banking manager, and he had a sign in the back of his business that said, to stay number one, train like you're number two. And that goes back to being, restless. You can't just be content with the way things are, but not change for change's sake. But if we think about change, it's there. You can't ignore it. And if you do, you're going to wither away. So that culture now, I'm quite proud, it sort of permeates through the business. And people are coming up with great ideas all the time. And it just amazes me.
Fantastic. So it sounds like you've got this great legacy that you can leave behind. How are you building the next generation of leaders to...
Yeah, I would say I inherited a great legacy, and I've done my bit, and I sort of talk at work a bit about a wall, and there was a solid foundation from our founders. I'm proud that I've been able to lay a couple of rows of bricks on that one there, and then sort of the next generation are coming through. And the way that I've tried to do it is to form a senior leadership group. So I can recall listening to Rick Charlesworth talk about his success, and he was one of the first sports coaches to put in a leadership group. It's quite common now across AFL and most sports, but he was one of the first to put a leadership group. So it's not just one person, it's a group. So we formed a senior leadership group. And so that's one way of getting a bigger group involved and developing them. So each of those people have a lot more responsibility for their streams of work. They can come forward with proposals and they can run with projects. We've done a lot of work on cross projects, so people doing different projects to get different experiences. Obviously, in terms of looking at people's personal development, what they'd like to do. When people go on leave, I'm a big believer people need to have a break. So I really encourage when people go on leave, switch off the emails, the phone, and allow someone to do your job, to step up and actually do the job. Give them, they're not just there to keep its seat warm, they're actually there to do the job. So up prior to COVID, I quite often take 4 or 5 week leave break and then enable one of our COO or CFO to have the opportunity to sit in the chair and have a go at running the business. So I think that's part of it. The other part is visibility. So when I first joined Steel Blue, it was a CEO who would present the business update to the board. I've moved away from that now, where I invite each of those stream leaders to come in and have a short 15, 20-minute update so they can get visibility with the board and they can get credit for the great work they're doing and they can talk about the challenges that they're going at openly and the board can ask them questions. So I think it's about giving people visibility and it's about setting clear direction, but giving them the scope to put the how, where we want to go and why we want to do it. That's led from the very senior exec, the board and myself, but how we get there, I'm very open to giving them free rein as to how that's done, so long as we achieve the outcomes.
That's great. And it means you can actually go and take a good break.
Yeah,
Trust your team to get on with it.
Exactly. And if I had been a young Garry that you chastised many years ago, maybe I wouldn't be like that. So, but I'm quite at ease letting people take responsibility. That said, as you know, as all leaders, from time to time, people struggle and you may need to take a deeper dive to help that person out. But in my experience, that's very rare.
So speaking of a young Garry, with all your years of wisdom and experience and all the benefit of hindsight, what advice would you give your younger self now starting out in his career?
Yeah, I think the first one is talked about, don't sweat the small stuff, focus on the bigger picture, trust your people. One that I'm a big fan of now is communicate. And I take the attitude that every employee at Steel Blue is a quasi-owner of the business, even technically they're not. And so I start the premise, I tell everyone who joins us, I will give you as much information as I can, as long as you respect it. If you don't respect it, then we'll have to deal with that. But if you respect it, I'll share information so you know exactly how we're going. And during COVID, I think that was very valuable. I was very upfront with the situation that we were in a good position. It was our intent to make sure that we preserve people's jobs. We want to look after our partners. So I was very transparent as to what was happening, so everyone knew what was going on. So communication's one. Don't sweat the small details. The other one would be, I guess, be true to your word. And so if you say you're going to do something, say you're going to do it. And what drives me crazy over the years is all these surveys that people get you to do, but no one ever tells you what that changed as a result of it. So, one good thing about being CEO, you can do things differently. So when we have an engagement survey of our people, we're very clear. We have workshops afterwards, what changes we're going to make, and we articulate that. So to me, I think, so if you say you're going to do, don't just do it for tokenism. There's a bit of discussion of politics about that at the moment, but I won't go there. But it's about, if you're going to say you do something, do it. I'm a big fan of no surprises. So that goes up to the board or down to the team. So what I've learned over the years, there's never been a problem, and there's been lots of them, but there's never been a problem that could not be solved. I know at times as leaders, you think, oh my God, how am I going to get through this? This is horrendous. But every issue that I've faced over my career, we've always found a solution. Maybe not me myself, it's maybe I've reached out to my network, maybe we've had to get into a consultant or we'll just engage the team, but we've always found a solution. So I would say don't stress when there's an issue, keep calm, and keep going. There'll be a way out of it.
Well, it sounds to me like you've taken all that advice anyway, Garry, without articulating that. So thanks for sharing your leadership insights, and best of luck as you continue to grow the organisation.
Thanks, Margaret.